The audience buzzed with expectation as the spotlight settled on the late show stage. Stephen Colbert stepped into the frame with his trademark mixture of earnestness and satire, teasing the evening segment before announcing, "Our guest tonight is, well, you know, one half of the world's most talked about duo. Enter Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex, dressed sharp in a navy suit, bearing a polite smile that spoke of both confidence and lingering weariness from his decades in the public eye." At first, the interview held the expected tone. A few light-hearted remarks about California weather where Harry now resides, the joys of parenting two kids, and the oddities of royalty post Megxit. Harry participated smoothly, charming, affable, clearly polished in media mode. But beneath the banter, one got the sense Colbert had come prepared with something weightier. With a measured pause, Colbert leaned forward. "So, Harry, you've been outspoken lately about mental health, admirable and necessary. But some critics argue that you've gone from royal confessor to political agitator. How do you respond?" Harry's expression softened. "My aim has always been to use whatever platform I have to destigmatize mental health. It's never about politics, it's about humanity." Colbert nodded, then pivoted. "Sure, but more recently, you've weighed in on U.S. policy, statements about climate change, about geopolitics. People are asking, is this advocacy or projection?" Harry tilted his head. "Speaking about something I believe in isn't projection." "Fair," Colbert replied. "But when did speaking become policy making?" The tone shifted. That's when Colbert unleashed the clip, a short, sharp collage of Harry publicly criticizing conservative media, his pointed words layered over footage of him calling out specific legislations and political figures. The studio went quiet. Harry's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. "I called out language that harms people. When climate denialism kills communities, when policies ignore suffering, I speak. That's not politics, it's conscience." Colbert rested his chin on his hand. "A conscience isn't immutable. It evolves. My concern is, what happens when a former royal becomes a mouthpiece, a lobbyist in waiting?" Harry drew in a breath. "I won't let titles muddy my purpose." But then Colbert struck again, this time with a moment intentionally crafted. "Let me ask you, is it possible that stepping away from the crown, stepping into activism, that maybe you're searching for purpose in places you haven't fully understood?" The question wasn't framed as criticism, but it landed like one. Harry's eyes raised, looked into the camera. "I know exactly why I speak. Because I lived the consequences of silence. And I won't stay silent again." The audience reacted, not with applause, but hushed intensity. For a moment, the interview teetered between discourse and raw confession. Colbert took a breath. "So we come to the core question. What is your next move? An author, advocate, activist, or something more?" Harry leaned forward with quiet determination. "To confront crises, not for cameras or credentials, but because I can." Colbert, unsettled, paused. "What do you mean by that?" Harry's answer was precise. "Meaning, people use titles, pride, or legacy as shields. I left one system. I refuse to join another just because it's easier or expected." Then the tension hit a fever pitch. Colbert looked at his cue card, then shook his head. "I think that's where we need to pause." He turned to the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, we must go to break." Harry's expression didn't change, only the weight behind his eyes deepened. The camera pulled back as Colbert cut to commercial, but there was no pat outro, no returning from break, only silence, and the sound of footsteps as Harry left the stage off camera, off script, off message, off control. The studio audience sat frozen. Colbert lingered at his desk, gaze fixed in the distance, his poker face betraying a flicker of disquiet. Seconds later, the show cut to an abrupt transition. No laughter, no applause. just the jarring reminder that conversations sometimes choose their own direction, and that history is often made when the script is left behind. Backstage was silent, tense, the kind of silence that echoes louder than any audience reaction. Prince Harry, shoulders squared but jaw set tight, walked down the hallway flanked by two visibly startled producers. Colbert had not followed. Cameras weren't rolling, but every glance from crew members said enough. What just happened? What had been scheduled as a triumphant media appearance had quickly devolved into something else. Not a scandal, not yet, but something raw. A moment that pulled at the fragile veneer of celebrity diplomacy and demanded something messier in its place. I was brought here to talk, not to be cornered, Harry told the producer flatly. And he was brought to host, not to sanitize. The producer responded cautiously. It got away from everyone. Back on the set, Stephen Colbert was still seated, unmoving, looking into the void just past the camera's lens. His earpiece buzzed. His showrunner urgently asked if they should cut the segment, edit it, smooth it over. Colbert finally responded with a single sentence. Let it air. News of the abrupt cut spread across social media like fire. Prince Harry storms off Colbert, blared headlines from right-wing outlets. Left-leaning journalists called it a moment of necessary tension. But everyone agreed on one thing. The segment was going viral before the show had even finished airing. Colbert's team scrambled. PR managers huddled in the green room. Legal was on the phone. A senior network executive emailed a single-line query. Do we have to run this? But Colbert wasn't budging. He turned to his staff and said, You want honest conversations? Then we take the heat when it gets honest. Prince Harry, meanwhile, had already made his decision. He would not return for the second segment. Instead, his team issued a carefully worded statement. The Duke of Sussex remains committed to open dialogue. Tonight's exchange veered into unexpected territory, but he remains proud of his work and convictions. But behind the scenes, Harry was seething. They knew what they were doing, he muttered to an aide in the car that whisked him away. They don't want answers, they want sound bites. Across the city, royal commentators stirred from dormancy like sharks sensing blood. Prince Harry's Hollywood honeymoon is over, declared one commentator on a late-night talk radio show. Another former tabloid editor tweeted, he left one crown only to get burned under the bright lights of American media. Poetic. But even among his detractors, something had shifted. For all the critiques about his departure from royal life, few had expected Harry to stand his ground so forcefully, so publicly. And fewer still anticipated the ripple it sent through political and cultural spheres. Progressive advocates praised his defiance. This isn't about monarchy, one activist posted. This is about calling out hypocrisy, no matter the platform. Conservative pundits, on the other hand, branded Harry a liability, a virtue-signaling expat, a man out of his depth. Meanwhile, Colbert received both accolades and vitriol. In private, he admitted the interview had gone off script in a way that might cost him. But he stood by it. We can't invite people on and pretend to listen, he told his team. Either we talk or we stage. I didn't come here to stage. Back at their Montecito home, Meghan Markle sat quietly reviewing clips from the show. She watched her husband's final moments on set frame by frame, his stillness, his quiet tension. She knew that look, not anger, but exposure. He was trying to stay on message, she whispered, but they wanted blood. Across the living room, their publicist had already drafted responses. A damage control tour, maybe a new interview, this time controlled, favorable, maybe Oprah again, or Gayle King, or better yet, stay silent. Let it pass. But Harry wasn't interested. For him, something had crystallized in that moment. He had tried playing the game, tried media as diplomacy. But as he told Meghan quietly, I don't think this is about redemption anymore. It's about clarity. She looked at him, brows furrowed. You think this is war? No, he said. I think it's truth. And people don't like truth when it doesn't flatter them. Meanwhile, Colbert's team uploaded a teaser of the interview to social media. It didn't show the full segment, just one 28-second clip enough to light a fuse. Colbert, are you advocating or are you campaigning? Harry, I'm surviving. The internet erupted. Within hours, trending hashtags included hash Harry Scalbert, hash Late Show Firestorm, hash Royal Meltdown, hash Duke Unfiltered. Everyone, from morning anchors to meme pages, weighed in. Colbert fans praised the confrontation. Harry's defenders called it a setup. Conservative influencers mocked him as Prince woke. Progressives dissected every word for hidden meaning. But something odd happened, too. In the storm of takes and countertakes, the conversation deepened. Mental health, climate, monarchy, media bias, all back on the table. Messy, noisy, human. The moment may have gone off the rails, but it had also cut through the noise in a way no PR crafted segment ever could. And neither Harry nor Colbert had any intention of apologizing. By the following morning, the footage had crossed the Atlantic. In London, morning talk shows opened with grainy clips of the Colbert episode, some showing Prince Harry mid-response, others freezing the frame just before he stood up to leave. A slow-motion breakdown of the moment aired on Good Morning Britain, complete with panelists reading body language like courtroom psychologists. Back in America, the media was no less hungry. Late-night hosts, once close allies in Harry and Meghan's post-royal narrative, debated the line between journalism and provocation. Seth Meyers commented, I don't know if that was an interview or a cage match. Trevor Noah, who once defended Harry from tabloid attacks, offered a more nuanced take. Sometimes the mic doesn't pick up what was really said, but you can always hear the power struggle. The New York Times ran a piece titled The Royal Who Refuses to Be Polished, while The Atlantic argued that Harry's departure from Colbert marks a new phase in the American media's disillusionment with British monarchy soap opera politics. But perhaps the most unexpected reaction came from Buckingham Palace itself. In an uncharacteristically timed press briefing, a senior aide was asked whether the palace had watched the Colbert episode. The response: the Duke and Duchess are no longer working royals. We have no comment on their media engagements. But the aide's smirk said otherwise. British tabloids, however, were merciless. The Daily Mail ran with the headline, Prince in Peril. Harry's American dream crumbles as TV turns ugly. A particularly harsh opinion piece in The Sun called him the Duke of Delusion and described his Colbert exit as the clearest sign yet that the fairy tale has ended. Despite the storm, some circles rallied around Harry. Advocates for mental health defended his right to walk away from a situation he felt cornered in. Veterans groups reminded the public of his years of service in Afghanistan, asking why a decorated soldier was now being mocked for showing emotion. One viral post read, let's be clear, if you invite a man who watched his mother die in front of the whole world, then mock his values on air, don't be shocked when he doesn't stick around for the punchline. But Prince Harry himself stayed quiet. He canceled a podcast appearance scheduled for that week, skipped a fundraiser in San Francisco. Meghan was seen solo at a charity event in LA, her usual smile guarded, composed, but less warm than usual. Questions buzzed around them like flies. Would Harry respond? Would there be a lawsuit? Was this the end of their US media push? Then, finally, after 4 days of silence, Harry broke it. Not through a press release, not through Oprah, but on his own terms. A single camera video posted to the couple's Archewell website featured Harry sitting in front of a window, natural light behind him. He wore no tie, just a gray shirt, sleeves rolled up. He looked tired, not defeated, but exposed. I wasn't expecting that interview to go the way it did, he began. And I think Stephen Colbert wasn't either. But we live in a time where nuance is sacrificed for reaction. And I've spent too much of my life being packaged by institutions, royal and media alike. He continued, I won't apologize for walking away from something that felt performative, but I also won't throw anyone under the bus. That's not who I am. And if I've learned anything from the past decade, it's that sometimes your loudest truth is spoken in silence. The video clocked in at just under 4 minutes. Within an hour, it had 10 million views. It was an unexpected move, intimate, unfiltered, and clearly not vetted by any network or legal team. And for many, it worked. I don't know if I agree with everything he said, tweeted a U.S. Army vet, but I respect the hell out of how he said it. Colbert, for his part, made a surprising pivot too. He opened that night's late show not with jokes or political barbs, but with a straight-to-camera message. Last week, things got tense. That wasn't the plan. But sometimes, when conversations go off script, you get to something more real than you planned. I respect Harry for his honesty and for showing up. Always welcome back. The audience applauded. Some stood. It was a rare moment of grace, even in the often unforgiving terrain of modern media. Meanwhile, the incident was beginning to reshape how other public figures approached interviews. Political aides revised talking points. Celebrities added Colbert clauses to their appearance contracts, requesting pre-screened topics and tighter oversight. Producers scrambled to assess risk. Across Hollywood, agents whispered, don't let your client do live TV unless they're bulletproof. The age of the carefully choreographed interview was dying, and Harry had inadvertently lit the match. As days passed, something even more unusual happened. Rather than diminishing him, the incident began to humanize Harry to a broader audience. For years, his critics called him spoiled, soft, a royal playing victim. But now, those same critics watched a man visibly struggling to reconcile fame with purpose, and they couldn't look away. Think pieces reframed the conversation. Was this really about Harry versus Colbert, or about how society weaponizes discomfort? Was the real issue not his walk-off, but how rarely we allow public figures to feel without being punished for it? One essay in The New Yorker captured it succinctly. Perhaps we're watching a man try to deconstruct the machine, one awkward, explosive, honest moment at a time. Yet, not everyone agreed. Right-wing media doubled down. Fox News ran a nightly segment titled The Prince and the Pity Party, with hosts mocking Harry's fragile ego and calling Colbert a hero for pushing back. A political cartoon showed Harry in a crown made of tissues, sobbing into a microphone. But the deeper cut came from within royal circles. An anonymous friend of Prince William gave a quote to the Times. Harry always wanted to be the hero. He's learning that being the center of the story doesn't make you the good guy. The line stung, but Harry didn't respond. He didn't have to. The conversation had already outgrown him. For once, he wasn't the narrative, he was the spark. The moment that reminded a media-saturated world that sometimes people crack. Sometimes they snap. And sometimes, in those very moments, you get closer to truth than any perfectly prepared soundbite could ever take you. And as the dust settled, one thing was clear. Neither the throne he left behind, nor the cameras he'd embraced, could define what came next. That would be up to him and him alone. Weeks passed. The world, ever eager for its next headline, began to shift focus. A scandal involving a senator, a tech billionaire's bizarre Twitter meltdown, and a royal wedding on the European mainland began to dominate airwaves. Yet, the embers of the Colbert Prince Harry saga still glowed beneath the surface. Because for many, it wasn't just about a walk-off, it was about what came after. Prince Harry, ever the paradox, A man both retreating from and defined by public life re-emerged, but not in the usual arenas. No talk shows, no new interviews, no headlines driven by palace insiders or family leaks. Instead, he chose a surprising platform: education. He announced a new initiative under the Archewell Foundation, launching Project Resolve, a global mental resilience curriculum designed for schools. It wasn't splashy, it wasn't flashy, but it hit like lightning. Backed by Harvard, UCLA, and international mental health organizations, the project aimed to normalize conversations around anxiety, trauma, and emotional strength for youth, especially boys, particularly those from military families or communities affected by violence. The first public address he gave was not in a studio or red carpet, but at a small high school auditorium in Baltimore. He spoke not as a prince, but as a veteran, a father, and a man trying to turn personal chaos into purpose. His speech, raw, unscripted, emotional, went viral. No matter how much privilege you're born into, trauma doesn't discriminate, he said, and I've spent far too long being defined by what happened to me rather than what I did with it. The standing ovation lasted nearly 3 minutes. Colbert, meanwhile, moved on, but with a noticeably softened tone. In the weeks following the incident, he made multiple subtle nods to the experience, from shifting how he handled emotionally sensitive guests to inserting a disclaimer before interviews involving controversial figures. Behind the scenes, his production team quietly revamped their protocols. They began holding longer pre-interview meetings with guests, added a wellness liaison for emotionally heavy topics, and reviewed footage more cautiously before airing contentious moments. It wasn't an apology, but it was growth, and that growth didn't go unnoticed. Critics who once pounced on Harry began to reassess. Op-eds turned reflective. Even Piers Morgan, known for his relentless criticism, begrudgingly tweeted, "Still don't agree with Harry on much. But at least he's putting his pain to work. Respect where due." What surprised the public even more, however, was what happened next. In an unannounced gesture that stunned both fans and cynics alike, Stephen Colbert donated a significant portion of ad revenue from the controversial episode to Project Resolve, matched by CBS. When asked why, Colbert simply said, "If we're going to tell stories that spark friction, we should also be part of the healing." The moment symbolized something rare in modern media: accountability without spectacle. Two public figures had clashed, yes, but they hadn't imploded. They had, each in their way, responded with substance instead of vengeance.